Welcome, everybody. So I'm glad to give my voice a little bit of a break after that presentation and bring some friends on to really go into more depth on these topics. Segueing from some of the data we presented, crowds are interesting because they irritate people and they're very noticeable. And because they're noticeable, you can message around it in marketing to encourage people to go to other places. But what happens in a situation where you have a tourism model that might not be culturally sustainable or economically sustainable? Is that something that's noticeable? Will people know if a community doesn't welcome them? Start next to me with Sally.
Thanks, Madeline. So I think as a visitor to a place, you get the feeling if you're not welcome. It's like being a guest in somebody's home. You know if you're welcome there or if you are not. I think that this is something that, through many of the examples that you've talked to, is becoming much more of a consideration for travelers as we get a ton of media and press coverage from destinations where overcrowding or other sustainability issues are becoming front and center in local and indeed political domains. So I think, yes, this is something that travelers are becoming increasingly aware of, but indeed, as your research has shown, it's really difficult for travelers to understand exactly the impact that their own choices make, their behaviors, and to really connect the issues that they're seeing maybe on screen or in a newspaper with their own travel plans. So for those of you who don't know what Travalyst is, we are a non-profit that has convened some of the world's biggest travel and technology brands and platforms in a pre-competitive coalition, essentially a completely non-commercial and non-competitive effort to bring sustainability information to the mainstream, specifically so that consumers can understand the issues in that destination and with the businesses that they are considering spending money with, like hotels, and so that they can understand the power of what may seem to them as small choices, but actually have a really powerful effect on a destination. So I think travelers are more aware. You talked about the say-do gap, the intention to action gap. They want to make better choices, but we have to make relevant information available at scale, because otherwise people are just getting more frustrated, more confused, and are turning away from the issues.
Shannon, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's no question you're aware of the reception vibe, as it were, the feeling in a destination. I mean, if you're traveling and your interactions with local communities aren't paramount to your travel experience, then regretfully, perhaps you ought not travel, because I think it's critical. So there's no chance that travelers don't understand. You know, what's challenging, I think, is the system that we've set up and the level of, how disparate we are amongst guests, be it they escorted travel or FIT travel, and what it is they're receiving and how they're getting in destination. So, you know, a lot of it that we're looking at has to be a really high level of traveler education. Now, traveler education is a really complicated thing because, of course, guests are going on vacation. And a lot of times, sensibilities are left behind, and perhaps those manners aren't always brought with them. And so it takes a very concerted effort. We're very different levels of the distribution channel, yet we all need to be aligned in how we're communicating to guests. And I think that that's critical and something that we can really work on.
Mateu, how do you view this?
Well, I'm from Barcelona, so it's quite known recently for over-tourism. But we also know by experience on 2020 that maybe it's better some kind of over-tourism than zero tourism. Living in a city empty of visitors, in an open city to the world, like we have been always, is a challenge as well. So now the challenge to manage those crowds is better. And as you already mentioned, education is critical, is crucial. Our visitors should know what they are visiting. So the product they are visiting should be highlighted. The product, how to behave, which is the culture you're visiting, which is the food, which is the timetable. We do, and maybe you have realized that we do have dinner late. And then when you see people having dinner in summer at 6:30 in Spain, seems strange. well, they should maybe understand that maybe dinner is a little bit later. The restaurant is happy because then they have different timetables. But understanding the culture of the place, the product you're visiting, is very, very, very important.
Well, on that note, while it's certainly important to have visitors and make sure that money is coming in, I think there are many people who don't realize what to expect, because if they are only traveling a couple times a year, which is very frequent, a lot of the traveling market takes 1 or 2 leisure trips out of the whole year, there's not the same type of thought that goes into their decisions, because they think, well, how much of a difference could this make? I only take this one holiday a year. Does my decision really have an impact on the place that I'm visiting? How can you help people see the way that their actions affect a place collectively when really this is a very infrequent choice to go on holiday?
Well, I think that travel industry has evolved really a lot, and we should keep helping travel industry on the education evolution. So those web platforms that tell you how is the place. When you buy a smartphone, when you buy a car, when you buy something, you look for reviews, you look how it's prepared, how is, even when you buy a fridge, you educate yourself which fridge to buy. When you travel to a place, you should be trained to go to that place. The same you do when you buy anything. And when you're traveling, you're investing your income, you're investing your savings. So you have to really take care of yourself and educate yourself with information, with prescription, with other comments, understanding the place you're visiting. And really, with that way, you will be having a full experience. If not, you will have a bad experience. That's what we have to tell people.
Can I come in on this as
Absolutely.
well? Because I think, I couldn't agree more. I think there's 2 parts to this. It's all about information, right? Providing information to consumers in a way that's accessible. I think at Travalyst, we think about this in 2 ways. The first is getting the kind of data on impacts and sustainability out there at scale in ways that consumers can really understand and engage with. So we know that travelers do not have a huge attention span when they're planning and booking a trip for sustainability information, because there's a lot of other data to take in. So it has to be there on the platforms in the places that they already know and trust, which is why Travalyst has convened the OTA platforms, the meta searches, Googles, the GDSs, to make sure that this data is going to the places that people are booking on. But not just that, not just getting the information out there, but making it accessible and relevant. So a great example here is CO2 emissions for aviation. Now, thanks to the work that Travalyst has been doing, you can't really book a flight without seeing an emissions value from the travel impact model that is powering our work on getting emissions impact data to the mainstream. But I've been working in sustainable travel and tourism for 20 years, and a kilogram of CO2 still means nothing to me. But when you look at our partners, Google, and how they're presenting that to consumers at the time of booking a flight, they're giving a bit of market reference and saying, for this route, this flight is actually, on average, 20 or 25% lower emitting than the other flights that you could choose today. That is a hugely empowering piece of information that, as an average consumer, I can engage with, and I can directly make a different choice that has a significant and quantifiable impact. The same is for accommodation and how hotels can present the work that they are doing to consumers, so that people know with what may seem like a relatively small choice actually has a big and meaningful impact at the destination level. I think when you couple that with then really creative and powerful destination marketing campaigns, which get much more creative and tap into that inspiration piece of travelers thinking about a destination, I'm thinking about the likes of New Zealand and the Tiaki Promise that the New Zealand policymakers and destination authorities launched in response to locals saying, we love tourism, we need tourism, but actually the way that we're seeing some travellers behave is not okay. So they developed this incredible campaign based on Maori heritage around respect for nature, and developed a ton of assets and content that communicated proactively to travellers, this is the way to do it in our destination. And it's been hugely successful. So I think at each point of the traveller journey, bringing relevant, inspiring, and accessible information is doable and critical, but just as Shannon said, it's got to be aligned and consistent.
Yeah, and I can jump in there because as a travel provider, the Travel Corporation owns 40 brands. So some of those are Trafalgar, Kentucky, Insight Vacations, Uniworld, Red Carnation Hotels, primarily escorted tours, some FIT travel. And so, we are presenting on behalf of a destination, but we're also presenting what sustainability means to us and the tactical approach. So a pretty simple example, animal welfare. We don't allow touching of wildlife. There's no elephant riding. And so when we make these decisions from an operational perspective, we need to make sure that equally our marketing and communications teams do an audit where there is absolutely no images shown, either UGC or otherwise, of individuals touching wildlife. So you need to make sure that you're communicating, and what's more powerful than a visual in travel marketing, exactly what you're telling your guests. So we're employing HVO biofuel on the coaches that we own. Equally on those trips, we're looking at ways to communicate, did you know this trip is run on X percentage, because this is a work in process, so I don't have the statistics yet, of HVO, thus your footprint on this trip will be whatever reduction we're able to accomplish when we get through this analysis. So it's really critical, and I think that a lot of operators underestimate how much we can educate. When you're in Barcelona, bring a water bottle, because you don't need to pitch another plastic water in the recycling bin. You can drink the water. All of those elements on all of the planning phase, when you're in region to at home, is really important. And it's not easy, but it's really important.
I know Sally had mentioned some of the push for real cultural features in marketing and in educational materials. One of the indicators we see in the data is that can be easier with some audiences or some markets than others. In the sustainability research, we found that the local culture within a destination, it was a huge reason for destination selection in markets like France, Italy, Spain. Those are source markets that care a lot. But then in the US, the local culture ranked as the 16th most popular reason for choosing a destination in the study. In the UK, it was the 9th. So how do you go about speaking to those kinds of travelers and motivating travelers who weren't that motivated to choose a culture for its destination to begin with?
Well, let me be clear. Barcelona is a successful city in terms of tourism. We passed from 4 million overnights in 90-something up to 36 million overnights. We have limited the capacity of hotels and of touristic flats, so we do have a limited offer. So we will focus that offer to those that want to experience our culture. So if those US citizens that feel that the reason to visit somewhere and the cultural, the identity, all those things is the 16 issue, others that will to understand our culture will go first. So if someone wishes to visit Barcelona in the future, because the demand of visitors to Barcelona is huge and the offer is small, will be those willing to come to experience the real Barcelona.
Do you do that by adjusting marketing budgets for different source markets? What's the approach?
We will focus our marketing to promote our products, not to promote the city anymore, not to promote the beauty of Barcelona, but to promote come for our classical music and stay for the rest. Come for our exhibition on Picasso and stay for the rest. Come for the #1 restaurant in the world and stay for the rest. Come for the #1 cocktail bar in the world and stay for the rest. So come for those reasons that make us proud of ourselves and stay for the rest. If you want to come because you want to do things, you will be last on the line. First on the line will be those coming for Mobile World Congress and staying for the rest. Those coming from the America's Cup and staying for the rest. So coming to experience the real Barcelona.
Sure.
I think this is, sorry, Madeline.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think this is what's really interesting and exciting to see. Destinations becoming much more vocal about the kind of business and visitors they do want and the kind of stuff that they want less of. And you think about some of the very creative campaigns that destinations like Amsterdam have put out there, including to young British guys going for a particular type of tourism. We're not interested. We don't want that. That's fantastic. That really strong voice of you are welcome if you come for these special things about our destination, but we don't need that kind of business. And it's fantastic because it means that short-term financial gain is not the sole decision-making behind the marketing budgets. It's for that long-term sustainability of the destination itself. The one thing I say is that not all destinations are the same. Urban versus rural destinations, big destinations that are established versus earlier nascent destinations that possibly need some of that tourism dispersed. I think that joined up thinking is really important as well, because not all destinations are made the same, but as long as there can be that product market fit and that real clear message of here's our really key assets and here's the market that really would love what we have to offer and we don't need this kind of tourism, then I think that's the world we're moving into, and it's really exciting.
And Shannon, we tend to talk about a lot of these issues of models being off balance in places that are already in somewhat of a troublesome situation. What are the early warning signs that we should be looking out for? Is there potential for early intervention to make a material difference on a destination?
I mean, I think, yes.
Expound upon it.
Yes. Tourism is not meant to just happen to a place, okay? If you look, I'm a Canadian. I'm from Newfoundland. The fisheries were immediately illegal. Tourism just happened, and I was a young guide trying to figure out who all these Americans were and why they were showing up, and it was a very strange environment, but yet I was not included in the entire conversation. Local businesses and restaurants were not included. So there's no question to me that the greater opportunity you have to work with and engage with and connect with a destination, that what you end up having is greater resiliency through greater relationships. You understand when to go, when not to go, and why, and the why is really critical. So a lot of those early warning signs, it depends on who you are and where you are. If you live within a community, if you're an operator such as ourselves, and we are understanding through our tour directors and our guides, our hotel relationships and contracts. If you're hearing from a hotel, you've not listened to everything that happened prior to that. So yes, there's a lot of early warning signs if you're paying attention. It's difficult for me to expand upon that because I do think it is a pretty straightforward one for most of us.
Mateu, are there any early warning signs you think about, or what would you tell an up-and-coming destination based off of the lessons you've learned from the Barcelona tourism?
Well, that we've been pioneers on urban tourism in Europe, and sometimes we identified problems when we were in the middle of the problem. So you have to really have a good relation with the neighborhood. So with your locals, with the residents, that's essential. If you don't communicate, if they don't feel, if they don't realize the real impact of tourism on their personal lives, will be a full failure of tourism. And things are very clear. One is follow the regulations in terms of salaries, in terms of timetables. So people working in the tourism industry are important, so treat them important as they are. They are making you win a lot, so you have to pay good salaries if you want good quality. If not, you will have bad quality that will destroy the destiny. The second thing is you need to really emphasize your local offer and your local entrepreneurs. We in Barcelona created 30-something years ago Sonar Festival happening from this Thursday. It's the local entrepreneurs that created a global festival, or Primavera Sound, that they've been really global entrepreneurs. They had the chance to be a global player due to tourism. So to spread the opportunities of tourism, not only into hotels, but also into cultural entrepreneurs, creativity, also hospitals, education, so to enlarge the visitor economy and be very conscient of the residents, which are the key beneficiaries of tourism. And that's the main idea, to keep them as the main asset to benefit from tourism.
Sure. There's a few different references already being made here to various kinds of stakeholder collaboration, and that gets dropped a lot as part of the secret sauce for fixing all sorts of issues within destinations. I'd love to dive a little deeper into how to do that well. What's the process, and what are some of the challenges of making sure you have all the right voices at the table, and then having to understand who to listen to when you're actually sitting down and writing a policy?
This is my day job. Initially, the Travalyst Coalition was formed of the biggest platforms in the world. They compete on a day-to-day basis, having Booking and Expedia sitting around the same tables, Skyscanner and Google, MasterCard and Visa. It's an interesting one when you bring companies of that size around the same table and say, business, politics, commercial, left at the door. We are here to solve a shared issue that ultimately down the line impacts and benefits all of our businesses. But to address this, no one company or entity can own sustainability. This has to be a shared effort. So I think you set those principles out from day one, and you live by those every single day. And that's really critical, making sure that everybody's aligned to the same long-term objectives and the same principles of collaboration. So we've started there, and it was tricky and thorny, but 4 years on, we're making some pretty good progress. And now we're expanding into deeper collaboration with regulators, because, as Mateu said, regulation and policy is such a critical enabler. We hope, we aim for it to be, in driving the scale of change that we need, but it's challenging to navigate. So again, we need to do that collectively around the same table. But I couldn't agree more. The most important stakeholder groups, local people and local places. Without them, we have no tourism. And too often those voices are not included, they're not round the table, and that's where we should all be starting. So Travalyst was founded by Prince Harry, specifically because of his experience of the impacts of tourism on local people and places. And so that's been a big core it's been the core to our mission from day one. We do a lot of roundtables with local communities, local businesses that talk about the impact that the big businesses that we work with have on their destinations, on their day-to-day businesses. And we try and make sure that those voices are really present in our minds and in our discussions. So I think you grow that collaboration and that participation over time, and you make sure that everybody's aligned on the long-term objectives.
Sure. And Shannon, you described how this had impacted you personally in a past part of your career. How do you think about how to do stakeholder collaboration well now as a result of that?
Sure, because in another part of that past life, I was a destination development consultant, and so that means oftentimes there's an unrealistic view on how long it might take to have a tourism development strategy or a sustainability strategy built. And the consultation process is long, it's arduous, it's long, and that's okay. And I think that if you're going to do a ground-up approach where you're going to go from community residents to the travel trade distribution network, that will take many layers and a great deal of time, and it needs to be phased up. And that needs to be okay. Often it happens in silos. I collaborate with my peers/competitors in this space on sustainability because we need to be working together for a litany of reasons. But very often, if I hear from a DMO, do I often hear from the marketing department, are they speaking the sustainability language? And we're asking them to. We're trying to recreate destination partners. A great example is Visit Scotland, destination partnerships, to take the traditional marketing partnership and take a sustainability lens on what their needs and priorities are versus ours and meet in the middle. And it's bloody hard because no one thinks that way. So look, it's a long-term approach, and too few voices are omitted.
Mateu, last word goes to you. How do you do stakeholder collaboration well? And teach us in under a minute. We got it.
The best way is to really be inspirative with the community to be inspirative, and to really know and understand how tourism can really benefit them personally. not only as a community, not as only as an impact on GDP, but also as a citizen to be proud of their city, of their place, because it's visited and it's respected and it's enjoyed.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, our panelists.